They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to prayer. Everyone was filled with awe at the many wonders and signs performed by the apostles. All the believers were together and had everything in common. They sold property and possessions to give to anyone who had need. Every day they continued to meet together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and saying and enjoying the favor of all the people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. Okay, that's our first passage. Take it in, breathe in the joy of the Acts of the Apostles. The second reading comes in John chapter 13, verses 31 to 38. When he was gone, Jesus said, "Now the Son of Man is glorified, and God is glorified in him. If God is glorified in him, God will glorify the Son in himself, and will glorify him at once. My children, I will be with you only a little longer. You will look for me, and just as I told the Jews, so I tell you now. Where I am going, you cannot come. A new command I give you, love one another, as I have loved you. So you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another." And Simon Peter asked him, "Lord, where are you going?" Jesus replied, "Where I am going, you cannot follow now, but you will follow later." Peter asked, "Lord, why can't I follow you now? I will lay down my life for you." Then Jesus answered, "Will you really lay down your life for me? Very truly, I tell you, before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. All right, so here we are. We are the church. We are at church. We are also the church, gathered together. But what that means can sometimes seem like this weird, abstract, ethereal thing that vicars like me say, and then people go, "Yeah, that's a great idea," and then they leave, and then they have no idea what the talk was about. So hopefully this isn't one of those times, and if it is, then please tell Sam, and he'll try again next week to get it right. So we've seen 2 powerful pictures of what it means to be church. In John 13, Jesus says, "By this, everyone will know you are my disciples if you love one another." And in Acts 2, we glimpse the early church kind of living this out. They're breaking bread together. They're sharing possessions. They're praying and caring for each other in everyday life. And as the church, that's the vision. We're a community where the love of Jesus is made visible, where someone can wander in and be like, "Oh, there's something a bit different about this place," or kind of feel like there's something here. Hi, Mark. You okay? It's risk assessed, everyone. Don't worry. Where the love of Jesus, it's hard to come back from that. Where the love of Jesus is made visible. And so what we're going to discuss this afternoon is kind of what does that look like? What does it look like practically? Hopefully, if you've been around for a while, you've noticed that this church has started to grow a bit, that we're not quite the same size we were a few years ago. And in the morning, you can see it even more. And so it's exciting. But that means that there's some structures and processes and things we like to put around the church to help us to continue to grow. And so we're going to talk a bit about how do we do life together and what does that look like here at St Andrews. And life kind of throws some curveballs our way, and a lot of time there's a phrase that's used in certain parts of the church, bigger picture church, that we just do life together, which sounds on the face of it this really lovely statement that I just do life. We're a group of people who do life together. And what that actually often means is that they come to church on a Sunday and they message on a Wednesday, and that's kind of like doing life together. And I have fallen prey to that. I have done life with people that way, and then a few years down the line, I'm like, not sure that's quite what the picture of doing life together looks like. And so we're kind of trying to work out what does it look like for us to do life together. What does it look like for us in our failure, in our brokenness, in our wonderfulness to do life together? We'll make mistakes along the way, but we're going to look at it and work out what it looks like. And so we're kind of looking at that today. And in our life, I remember a time for us where, for me and B and my wife, where life was pretty hard, where we didn't really know where we were going, what was happening, that we didn't really have much strength left. It was COVID. It was all going horribly wrong. And it was the bit of COVID where you were allowed to interact and people were allowed to come to your door for the point of the story. But and at that point where we were like, I don't really know what's going on, I don't really have any strength left, people just kind of started knocking at our door at about 5 o'clock with food. And it was incredible. And then we just ate. And the food that people started turning up with didn't just kind of taste like a meal, but it tasted like love. It tasted like, oh, okay, we're being held and supported here. This homemade Nando's that has been prepared and brought to my door, maybe marginally too spicy for my palate, but is the experience of love, is the experience of, oh, that is what it is to be cared for, that I didn't need to work out what I was going to feed me and my wife. We just ate. The other meals came at different points and we just kind of ate those meals. And in that moment, they just said, without having to stand at the door for ages and explain the theology of caring and how we do life together, they just said, we're with you in this. You're not alone. And I imagine that lots of us have those stories, those similar stories, because this is something that already happens here in this church. And if you're new to the church, then welcome. It will happen to you. And so so we're aiming for that feeling of, okay, I'm supported, I'm loved. And what we see in Acts 2 is the early church. The book Acts of the Apostles, for anybody who needs to know, is the story of the start of the church. It's really exciting. So if you haven't read the Bible for a while and you're like, oh, where do I start? Start at Acts and just be like, whoa, this is really cool. And then we'll talk about the rest of it. And for the church at that point, it was radical and different to everything that was going on around it. They were met with the Roman world, which was built on hierarchy and division. The wealthy rarely mixed with the poor. Women, children, and slaves had little status. The sick and vulnerable were often ignored, and life was incredibly fragile. And into this world came a new community. The followers of the way. They weren't Christians yet, they were the followers of the way. And in this community, men and women, Jews and Gentiles, rich and poor, slave and free, were all worshipping and eating at the same table. They shared possessions, made sure no one was in need, cared for widows and orphans. They lived as though family ties went far beyond blood. And in his book, Rodney Stark writes, in his book, The Rise of Christianity, Rodney Stark points out that during times of plague, when many abandoned the sick out of fear, Christians were known for staying and caring, often at great risk to themselves. And what happened was that people started to notice this love. The kind of love and community was so attractive that it drew people to the church. See how they loved one another was how one of the early church fathers summed it up. That people come to the church, people experience something in the church because of the way they love one another. And so this, for the early church, was their greatest witness. Not just their words. They didn't have fancy buildings with beautiful stained glass. They just lived in radical community. And as I explain the kind of context that the early church found itself in, you may be thinking, wow, that sounds really similar to the context in which I live. When I look at social media, it looks pretty much the same. There's less sewage, I imagine, but it looks the same. Our world today isn't that different. We live in a society more connected than ever, and yet loneliness is at record levels. And surveys say that 1 in 4 adults in the UK reports feeling lonely often or always. Which feels like pretty high odds to meeting somebody who might feel lonely. If you ask the mayor in Watford what are the biggest problems facing Watford, he was asked this a while ago, but what are the biggest problems facing Watford? He'd say car parking and loneliness. And I'm hoping he's dealing with the car parking one and we'll help out with the loneliness one. Maybe you've got some neighbours you've never found out the names of. Maybe our families are scattered all over the place. So many of us feel like we're carrying life alone. And I wonder if what will speak to our culture today is the same thing that spoke to people in the first century. A community of radical love, where people are known, carried, and cared for. And when it comes to following Jesus, maybe you've experienced that feeling of, okay, so I've ticked off the prayer one, I've worked out worship, I can read my Bible, I'm nice to people, I'm doing okay. And that's good. Please do all of those things. But this one kind of feels like it's not just a nice extra to add on top of. All of those things are really important and not nice extras either. But this is super important. This is part of what it means to live a life full in Jesus. That he doesn't call us to lives of isolated spirituality, but into life together, where we grow, forgive and encourage and share the journey side by side. And I want to be very clear that this is not a talk where I kind of say, and so now go and do it because you're rubbish at it currently, because it's not true. This is a church that loves amazingly. I checked in with 2 people who have been coming to the church for a long time this week just to see how they are. They've not been well. And both people responded with just how much they have been loved by this church, how much they have been supported and cared for. And there'll be times where that isn't always the case. We are people and we make mistakes, but our goal is that we do it as well as possible, that we journey side by side. And our invitation is to go deeper, to create more intentional spaces where this kind of love can flourish, where we can do this. And so we're going to get practical. We're going to do it. And some of the way we're going to do that is by, there's a few different ways we're going to do it. And the main one is that we're going to start groups. Oh, said everybody in the church. And groups, you will also know them as life groups, small groups, connect groups. We're going to go with the name groups. And the plan is that these are smaller, more intentional gatherings where we can know and be known, where we pray together, where we share joys and struggles, where we encourage one another in our faith, where we love one another in the really ordinary, practical ways. And you'll have heard, if you've been around for a while, that we have one connect group running. And that group is wonderful and will continue and is going to restart in October. And it will be restarted by the wonderful Sam and Beth, and they're going to look after that. And so that is one place where if you're like, okay, all of that stuff of being part of community, of finding family, of that stuff you've just talked about, I want to be a part of that and I want to get into grips with that. Then come and chat to Sam or Beth after the service. Sam is the one in the striped top. Beth was leading worship, in case you need any help remembering. Go and chat to them or come and chat to me, and we'd love to help you with that. And then there are other kind of groups in the pipeline of working out where we get to. And so there will be other options. Another option that we already have is St Andrew's Women, which, if I'm very clear, is our only exclusive group, because it is for women, just to be very clear about that. But St Andrew's Women, you're part of St Andrew's Women. Do you like St Andrew's Women? Good. That'd have been really awkward if you just said no. That is up and running, is happening, and the next one is
Next Sunday at 12 o'clock.
here. So if that's an even easier ask than what I was going to ask you to do. If you'd like to come along to St Andrew's Women, then come along next Sunday at 12 o'clock here in the church. And that is a wonderful group that's already functioning and doing a lot of what I've just talked about. One person shared a story of how that feels like their village. You know, so often we talk about needing a village of kind of support around you, and that's already functioning as that. And so if you'd like to find out more about St Andrew's Women, do come and talk to Anna and find out more, and come along next Sunday, because we want to be intentional about this. We don't want to be a church that kind of talks about the stuff and then says, now go and figure it out by yourself. We want to be a church that says, this is the stuff and here are the ways you can work that out here. And so, chat to Sam and Beth, chat to Anna. And if you're like, okay, but you've only named 2 groups, what if they get full? We will make more space. That is not a problem. And if that's a problem I will be very excited. But we want to be a church that does this, that works out how do we do it. We'll make mistakes. We will fail each other. But we'll pick each other up. We'll have grace for each other, and we'll go again. And so our invitation is to not just attend church, but to be the church, to step in, to open yourselves up to others, to be willing to give and receive, which feels risky in itself, but it's the whole point. We're not here for like an individual moment. All of that is good, but we're here to do it together. Because Jesus said, by this, everyone will know you're my disciples if you love one another. And so every time you show up to a group, every time you share a meal, every time we pray together, every time you carry a burden for someone, we're making the love of God visible. And that kind of love was irresistible in the first century, and it's irresistible now. So let's be people who love in a way that makes people go, what on earth is happening at St Andrews, and how do I be a part of it? And then you'll say, well, I'll just come along. Let's do it. Let's be the church together. Let's figure out what doing life together means. For the sake of ourselves and being able to do this journey of life with people around us, and for the sake of those who live down the road or in this bit of Watford, so that they may know the same love that we have received.